All right, second grade. We have arrived at the moment I've all been waiting for. We're going to wrap up our bread experiments for this week. As you remember, we had our control group, going to be Ginger with it. And then we've got our variable group, the group where we changed a little something. Now, to my great excitement this week, my control group did start to develop a little bit of mold. I don't know how well we're going to be able to see it. Whoop, right about there. It was really green yesterday, but now it's like kind of yellowish green going on there, right there. But my variable group, the group where we changed something, and that change was that I made my very own bread that had no preservatives at all over the course of 1 week instead of the 2 we've given our other group. Look what happened. Oh boy. Ugh. That's why that homemade stuff, you got to get to it quick because it will go bad fast. So I'm going to run through some notes on how we want to write this up. As good scientists, we always want to take notes on our experiments, and I would say that we got some pretty good results here. So I have a whole group of different crayon colors because I want to be very detailed in my notes, which for me means I would like to have different colors. I like to have different colors to show what's going on. And when you're talking about living things and stuff like that, sometimes it's best to be able to show what's happening in color rather than black and white, or in my case, purple and white. So I'm going to draw the outlines of my bread once again. I'm going to go, maybe I can do this on camera, boom. So we've got group one, our control group. It's very normal looking store-bought bread shape. And we still got all those little divots, so let me get my other color. I really encourage the drawing out of your notes. Not just if you have a hard time with writing and everything, but also just so you know exactly what's happening. I could say where everything happened. Like on the bottom left of this piece of bread, we had a little something going on, but for me, it is a lot better to just show. Like they say, a picture paints 1,000 words. So why try to write 1,000 words when I can draw exactly what I mean? So then I've got to take a nice close look at my control group here. We've got I want to use a little bit of yellow, and I want to use a little bit of dark green because that's what I'm seeing going on. Again, if you guys have different results on your bread, let me know. Show me. Every experiment can have different answers if we're using different things. But when we all get the same kind of stuff, that's how we know that we're running our experiment the right way. So there's my control group to show a little closer here. See, I got that little green and yellow spot. But for my variable group, you notice we had that green and yellow going on. What do you see here on my variable group, the group that I changed something? Might be a little hard to see in the light, but honestly, I'm not seeing any green or yellow. Ooh, even worse in the back. Oh my. And we got a little bit of green there on the back too, I'm just noticing now. But it's like a dark grayish black. So we could have two different kinds of mold developing on the two different kinds of bread, which would make sense. Because we all know that different living things like to eat different things and they like to live in different places, right? So let me get some different colors here, and I'm going to go with some, oh my, the one color I want black. Oh, there's some black. My daughter left me a nice short black one. So I'm going to use some black and gray for this one. And I've got a different shape for my bread too, so I'm going to do a different crust outline. So for this one, it's a much more kind of oval, almost half egg shape. Oop, my brown. Whoa. I've got like a half egg shape going on here for my homemade bread because I don't do it exactly like the stores do. Oh my. And then I want to get in my little edge there. And I'm seeing right in the center of mine, I've got some like dark areas here, like right towards the center. And it's even eaten all the way through to the back of the bread. So that's pretty cool. It's going all the way down through. So that's pretty interesting. We have a completely different set of mold. But I forgot here, bad note taking planning here. I forgot to write how my first piece of bread started out. So you want to have your first one in there just to show it was clean. Then I've got my second group. Boom, we got that dark black kind of molding going on here. Let me show you one more time. Boom. So again, my hypothesis, my original guess, my educated guess in the beginning, since I usually, when I'm looking at bread, I usually start to see mold and stuff towards the crust first. Completely wrong. That initial guess that I made, that educated guess that I made, that my crust would start to mold first, was completely not right. If anything, it all happened, all the action happened towards the center. So again, when you've got something that you make homemade, if mom made a cake, if you guys make your own bread, if you're making something at home, since it doesn't have those preservatives that kept this bread fresher for a lot longer, and we've only got a little bit started, you can see that without those preservatives, without those chemicals that protect your food, oh boy, it all started to develop a lot faster. So we want to take really good notes of these. Again, I had my hypothesis up here. I could probably say maybe on the next page whether or not that hypothesis turned out right or not, although a lot of my writing is going through the other side. So I'm actually going to go, instead of on the back, I'm going to turn to a whole new page, and I'm going to go ahead and write my results. I'm going to go results. Oop, maybe I should use a marker for this part. Results. Boom. My results were that the control or home or store-bought brand, store-bought bread, took 2 whole weeks to mold, and my homemade, remember that's our variable group because we did things different there, group, molded in just 1 week. Now I want us to think about, what does that tell us about our experiment here? What does that tell us? What are the conclusions that we can take from our result? Well, I think that we can conclude pretty safely that the preservatives, all those ingredients you saw on that list of our store-bought bread, do something to keep the mold from forming faster. So I could say my conclusion is that preservatives keep mold and germs off your bread for longer. And that definitely also, since I had this in the fridge before we started our experiment, I would say also that keeping your stuff in the fridge is going to keep it safe longer too, because this didn't sit in the fridge for even 1 day. But this was probably in my fridge for a week or two before I even pulled it out to do this experiment. So the combination of being in the fridge and having preservatives from the store are going to keep your food fresher for longer. So I'm going to say my conclusion. Oop, lost my black crayon. There we go. My conclusion. Oop, don't have enough places to set things down here. Conclusion. In conclusion. Oop. Let's see. Homemade bread. say without preservatives, molds faster. But like I've been saying this whole time, writing out all of our notes too can be a little boring, and also it can be a little tougher, right? When we have a hard time writing out these whole sentences and stuff like that. So the way I would draw this up is I would have my bread. We know that our store-bought kind of has that store-bought shape, and that my homemade has that kind of half egg shape going on there. I might even go ahead and put, what would preservatives look like to me? I would say that maybe they kind of look like medicine, right? So I'm going to do like a little medicine bottle. It's not going to look great, and I'm going to put a big P there to show my preservatives equals down arrow less. And let's see, what would our mold look like? Maybe I'd use some green there. I think that's a good place for some green. I made less green on my bread. Whereas the homemade, I'm gonna do the little pill bottle, but I'm gonna put a cross through it to show that it does not have any of those preservatives. Put a P next to it so I know I'm talking about preservatives. Lots more of that green mold. So you can see here that there's a lot of different ways to do your notes. And one way to look at it is if you know what's going on in those notes, you can look at those notes really fast and go, boom, I know that homemade shape with the preservatives means less mold. And I know that no preservatives in that homemade shape ends up with more mold. Now, am I trying to say that homemade stuff is less healthy for you? Absolutely not. Because in the end of the day, that's a completely different experiment, isn't it? If we had somebody eat nothing but homemade stuff for a long time versus store-bought stuff, then maybe you could start looking at people's health and tell whether or not that experiment will pan out. But something you can definitely think about too is if you're thinking about something that's more healthy for you, the stuff that other things want to eat faster versus the stuff that's harder for other things to eat might, in the end of the day, be more healthy for you. So if something's trying to eat this really fast and get right to it because it doesn't have the same kind of preservatives, maybe that might be something that your body's going to be able to eat faster and easier too. Because obviously the mold's breaking this down pretty fast. Whereas the store-bought stuff, maybe it's a little harder to break down. But that's a completely different experiment that we could probably run, but it would take a really long time. You would want to run it with lots of people. You would want to run it where you're eating nothing but store-bought or homemade. But at the end of the day, we can definitely say for 100% sure that mold likes homemade stuff just a little bit better. So I would say we got some pretty nice results from that. It took a while. I know some of us were being really patient with our first experiments and those store-bought breads. Thanks for holding out on that. And I'd love to see all the notes that you've gotten. I'd love to see how your bread's looking this week. So make sure to send me a copy of your notes. And if you have your own bread that you were doing the experiment with, it's perfectly fine if you're just watching along with me and writing notes on what we're doing. But if you have your own experiments that you've been running, I'd love to see your results. So I'm going to hang on to this bread for one more week so that I can show you next week how it turns out. But don't worry, next week we're going to be doing something completely different. We're going to be talking a little bit, again, about the living world. But I'm going to work on something completely different for you guys and probably a little faster pace, a little more entertaining. So you guys have a great week. Or a great weekend. It is really nice today, at least where I am. So make sure you get some outside time while it's nice, and you guys have a great weekend.